Hello and welcome back to Ghost Creatures and Scares Oh My. This is the eighth episode.
A podcast where we share our love of the show Supernatural and dive into the fascinating and terrifying real life legends behind the ghosts and creatures featured in each episode of Supernatural.
This episode is called Haunted Burial Sites and we explore the terrifying stories of ghosts attached to these places.
So each week we work our way through an episode from Supernatural, very briefly recapping the episode itself and then exploring the origins of whatever ghost or creatures featured in that episode. So this week we're looking at episode 8 of season 1 and it's called Bugs.
So the synopsis for this episode is it opens with two construction workers building new homes and discussing how lucrative they'll be once finished. One of the workers feels the ground shake and it suddenly opens up as a sinkhole, into which he falls, injuring himself. He notices there are bugs all around him and the other worker fetches a rope, returning to find his friend dead. Sam and Dean get involved when they hear about this incident and the cause of the death being named as mad cow disease, something that doesn't make sense to them. They travel to Oklahoma where all happened and meet the developer of the estate and his son, Matt, who seems to have a strange collection of bugs. Very strange. Soon another victim turns up, a woman attacked by lots of spiders in the shower. Sam and Dean begin to suspect Matt. However, Matt assures them that he's not responsible for the deaths. However, he has noticed insects behaving strangely. He leads the brothers to a spot in the woods where lots of bugs are congregating. They dig and find a skull. They learn that the remains are of Native Americans from the past, and they also learn about a curse stating that over 6 nights the tribe will protect this land, and no white person will be left alive. They realize it is the sixth night approaching. Sam, Dean, Matt, and his family are attacked by a swarm of bugs. They hold up in Matt's house and manage to survive the ordeal. Matt's dad reluctantly accepts defeat, and the property development falls through, ending the curse.
So this is a bit horrible one, isn't it, with the bugs? It reminds me a little bit of that film Arachnophobia. Have you seen that from the
Yeah.
night? I think it's a 90s film where the all these spiders just come from the
Yeah, if you don't like bugs, it's probably not the episode for you.
yeah. So it's we're basically going to look at really the whole episode we couldn't dedicate it to the Native American idea of haunted burial sites because it is a bit of an urban legend. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore that a little bit, where that idea came from, and go through some different burial sites around the world that are alleged to be haunted. So a common explanation for supernatural goings on in America, most commonly seen in movies and TV, tends to be a haunted house that's built on an ancient Indian burial ground. The disturbed spirits of the ancients of the land then enact their bloody vengeance against those who wake them by turning off the lights, making hooting noises, creating flies, and maybe, if they feel up to it, despite being dead, killing people. Sometimes this isn't known or revealed until the very end. Sometimes it's known only by the greedy land developer who doesn't care as long as he gets it cheap, or the people who don't believe in such nonsense, but they will by the end of the movie. So it's pretty much turned into a cheesy theme. Most commonly it was kind of in, I think, like 80s films, 90s films, I'm thinking of films like Pet
I
Sematary.
was going to say Pet
That
Sematary.
I mean, I love Pet Sematary, the original of one. I think that's a brilliant film, but it is pure cheese. But that and it's in The Simpsons as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And isn't it on Poltergeist? Isn't that the whole premise of Poltergeist? It's built on an ancient Indian burial ground. I'm
I
sure.
think so, but
Think
most of what I'm thinking about that one is when the Simpsons
yeah.
take the mick out of it, and it is because it's an ancient burial
It's
site, I think.
yeah, I think the Simpsons are great for well they were. I don't think the Simpsons is very good now, but it's that satirical kind of taking the mick out of things. So it's commonly believed in Native American cultures, like in many cultures, that the desecration of the dead's resting place is improper and can only lead to bad luck. Historically, developers in the United States have desecrated traditional Native American land, including burial grounds, to build homes, businesses, or to exploit resources. In recent years, there has been a push to excavate even, and relocate indigenous artifacts and bodies before developing on the land. So the idea that before they actually just, desecrate these burial places, actually respectfully move the bodies and the artifacts and replace them, rehome them, so it's not as disrespectful, I suppose. So, a case that I came across when I was having a little research into this is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. So, it was founded in 1926 in West Virginia, and it was a popular source of entertainment for the local coal mining population of the area. The first known European settlers on that plot of land were the Clay family in the late 18th century. In 1783, three of the Clay children were rumoured to have been murdered by a Native American tribe, and the family later sought vengeance and killed several Native Americans. The park, however, has generated increased suspicion and interest in the Indian burial ground trope. In the 1950s, two young children died tragically and violently during two accidents in the park, and the park was forced to close its doors in 1966. Six people in total are rumoured to have died at the Lake Shawnee amusement park. The park was later bought and reopened in the 1980s. During development, the remains of 13 Native American bodies were found, and most of them were children. The park closed shortly after reopening and instead holds guided tours of the allegedly haunted location. The park is widely believed to have been cursed, and it's featured on several television shows such as Scariest Places on Earth, Most Terrifying Places in America, Most Terrifying Places, and Portals to Hell. Critics of the Indian burial trope, they argue that it's deeply rooted in stereotypes and actually misrepresents Indigenous cultures. The Indian burial ground trope reinforces this outdated notion that Indigenous people are ancient, mystical, and prone to conjuring bad luck and evil spirits. Furthermore, it misrepresents the historic seizure of Indigenous lands and violence towards Indigenous bodies, artefacts, and cultural sites. Other critics warn that stereotyping Indigenous groups results in ignorance and contributes to violence against these groups. So basically, it's more of an urban legend that's been fueled by TV and film, and they're kind of saying that if you keep perpetuating this idea that the ancient Indian burial ground, it's actually really racist, and it's kind of portraying these people who, yes, were very spiritual and but is mystical, almost kind of comical. You know what I mean? I
Mm.
think that's what it's trying to say.
It's a little bit ridiculous using that as an excuse for a couple of kids dying when it's probably just a lack of actual like testing on the park and keeping it up to date and stuff like that. And I mean, six people died in the entire time that it was open.
Yeah.
Like,
That's it, and in it happens now when we've had some terrible ones in our country in Alton Towers and things. So in the 1920s or with probably the 50s it happened. You can imagine these malfunctioning kind of rides, but people like to attribute things and rumour grows and urban legends.
well, I suppose it's a never way for them to make money, isn't it? Attracting people in,
That's
like, oh, it's now
exactly,
one of the scariest places on earth
yeah.
because it's an ancient burial
Do you not
site.
think there's something creepy about what's the word? Fairgrounds and carnivals.
Especially when they're shut down and left.
Yeah, like abandoned.
Yeah.
You can go online and look. I think there's one in Chernobyl, like an abandoned theme park, and it's so eerie. It's crazy. There's loads of supernatural, like kind of creepypasta things about, Disneyland.
Hmm.
There was I can't remember what exactly it was, but there's a abandoned Disney park, I think in Orlando or California, and apparently it's like really haunted and things. So I love stuff like that. Amityville, that's another one. I forgot to mention that. That's the whole idea of Amityville, wasn't it? Was that the guy who killed his family was possessed by, because the house was built on an ancient Indian burial ground.
Right.
And well, I don't know if that was more of the film's influence. I'm not sure, or the family who moved in afterwards. But it's interesting.
Can't really remember much about that one, to be honest, other than Ryan Reynolds is in
Ryan Reynolds,
it.
yeah. He just runs around with his top off for some reason during the whole thing, just
Like, with an axe.
with an axe. Yeah, so we're going to spend today's episode exploring haunted burial sites from around the world. We're going to park the ancient Indian burial ground there. We've done a little bit of background, but I think we've done enough history. Let's dive into some stories. And we're going to try and determine how likely it is that this phenomenon actually exists. So, haunted tube stations in London, a little bit closer to home. Have you been on the tube before?
Yeah, it's like stepping into hell. That's just because of the heat.
Yeah, it's they're all kind of similar. You've got the subway in New York and the metro
It's
system
just
in
grim.
Paris.
Absolutely hate going on it.
Yeah, it's very busy and crowded. So the underground tube system in London spans around 250 miles with 272 stations. It has a daily ridership of around 1.8 million passengers and has been in operation since 1863. It has seen its fair share of tragedy over the years, such as the 7/7 terrorist bombings and the 1987 King's Cross fire. So it's no wonder that folklore and legend of haunting goings on have sprung up over time. However, before the tube station was even a thought, Londoners have been living and dying in the spot where many of the stations now stand. There are stories of workers stumbling across a huge pit full of skeletons, victims of the 1665 plague outbreak that swept the city, when they were digging to create the tube system in the 1800s. This has fueled many legends of angry spirits roaming the underground after having had their final resting place so rudely disrupted. So, yeah, we've got lots of mass burial sites in the UK because of mass outbreaks of plagues, whether it be in the 1400s or the 1600s. and they would never have thought that years down the line they'll be like digging up for tube stations. So that you can understand where this comes from, can't you? The idea that the spirits would be angry.
Yeah, that would have been resting there for so long, be disturbed for a train.
So there's lots of different stories, but the one we're going to focus on is the alleged Bank Street haunting. So Bank Street Station and the terrifying Black Nun apparition. The Bank Monument Station complex is comprised of the two interlinked underground stations at Bank and Monument. The complex is the eighth busiest station on the London Underground network, and it serves the Waterloo and City Line, Central Line, Northern Line, Circle Line, District Line, and the Docklands Light Railway. Bank Station has a reputation of being haunted by an apparition identified as Sarah Whitehead. The apparition of an elderly woman was seen by an employee very early one morning whilst the station was locked. She was followed down a dead-end corridor and she vanished. There has also been a report of strange knocks on the inside of an empty lift door, again while the station has been closed and locked up to the public. The ghost was then tentatively identified by some as Sarah Whitehead, otherwise known as the Black Nun of the Bank of England, probably due to the close proximity the station has to the bank and its famous ghost. So basically, she haunts not only the station but the bank next door.
Hmm.
According to the legends, the nun's brother was Philip Whitehead, a cashier at the bank next door. Philip was executed in 1811 due to forgery, and his sister, Sarah Whitehead, it is said, waited outside the bank every evening for 4 decades before she died in an act of kind of protest and anger at the bank. When she did die, she continued to hold vigil for her brother, walking the lengths of the platforms for eternity. In addition to the nun, some report an intensively putrid smell that arrives and leaves out of nowhere. Others claim to feel oppressive sadness when they enter the station. So I came across this story because I was looking for actual real life sightings of this black nun ghost.
It's one hell of a protest, like, isn't it?
That is, isn't it? Yeah.
Imagine that. Like, I'm going to protest it until I die,
And then
and I'm going
after
to
I die,
continue after I die as
forever and
well.
ever and
Yeah.
ever. So I came across this story online. It's from a platform called Soul Ask. An email was sent in with the following story. Please don't publish my name or details, but I saw what I believe to be a ghost in Threadneedle Street, London. I was on a short visit to London and was walking alone in the late evening along Threadneedle Street near to where the Bank of England is positioned. Suddenly, without warning, this lady was walking towards me. I don't know where she'd appeared from. One minute she wasn't there, and the next minute she was. The lady looked strange and was dressed all in black in what I thought looked like the style from the 1800s. She was wearing a black bonnet with a long veil, and her dress was long and full. I could see her face through the veil, and she looked sad. As I passed her, she glanced up briefly and asked in a soft voice, "Have you seen my brother?" I muttered no in reply. Almost immediately afterwards, I turned round to have another look at her, but she disappeared. There was no one behind me, other than a couple walking in the same direction. I've read since that the Bank of England has a ghost known as the Black Nun. I wonder if this is who I saw. Thoughts?
Imagine that. I just take off running.
Yeah.
Wouldn't stop. Never walk near it again.
Yeah, but at least she wasn't
Change
like kind
banks.
of nasty. She just, have you seen me, bro? Kind of thing.
Uh,
Um, Believability on that one, what do you think?
I mean,
Quite a few
there's
different
nobody there.
people.
Yeah, there's quite a few people, different people saying it. Doesn't really have anybody there to back his story, but I suppose, like, why would he lie?
Yeah, so this, whether
No.
it's a man or a woman, we don't know this one, but so this one we can't really verify. But I don't know about you, but when I read stories of especially people who work at places, I always think, what have they got to gain? Like if you owned somewhere and you wanted to draw up notoriety to get money, but these workers, why would they make up these stories? I believe that more when you've got just everyday people who are doing the jobs and they come across these things. I think that's more believable.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
So that was quite creepy, that one.
That was very creepy,
I think
yeah.
I think there's something quite unnerving about plague victims. Because maybe it's because of the time period, I don't know, but the idea of
Aye.
them just lurking around
It's
and tube
beating about the
stations.
place.
I think,
Aye.
do you not think tube stations and we've got the metro system up here? It's quite creepy. If it's one of them things. If
But it's going down into the dark, really, isn't it?
yeah, that's it. But I think these places like hospitals and when they're full of life in schools, but as soon as the lights go out and it's no one there, they're very
Eerie,
unsettling
yeah,
places, aren't they?
definitely. Places of death and stuff, isn't it? Really, it's horrible.
That's it. Right. I'm really geeking out with this one and really excited. So we're going to switch it up a little bit and go to the catacombs in Paris. Kind of similar because it's where lots of people who were buried who maybe suffer from the plague or actually just buried for different reasons. But I'm fascinated by these, and there's so many stories of hauntings. It would be silly not to put this one in. So, what do you know about the catacombs?
Just from films and stuff and
Yeah.
what we've watched.
So, the catacombs of Paris are underground tunnels containing tombs in Paris, France, which hold the remains of more than 6 million people. Extending south from the Barrière d'Enfer, the Gate of Hell, which is a former city gate, the catacombs were created as part of an effort to eliminate the city's overflowing cemeteries. Work on the catacombs began when the ground started collapsing in the Holy Innocents Cemetery from the overwhelming amount of remains there. The stench and unhygienic conditions could be smelled for streets around and added a sense of urgency to the cemetery eliminating measure. And from 1786, nightly processions of covered wagons transferred remains from most of Paris cemeteries to a mine shaft opened near the Rue de la Tombe Essoir. So yeah, that makes me feel a little bit uneasy
I
that
mean, it's grim, like, isn't it?
it is
Imagine that.
disgusting.
Imagine walking through the cemetery and there's that many bodies in it. The ground just crumbles and stuff.
I
Like,
think I
oh
read
no.
somewhere a while ago because I'm really fascinated by this anyway that the ground actually turned like liquid.
Ugh.
It was something to do with I don't know, but it was just the smell was overpowering and there was just too many bodies. I
Oh,
couldn't
no.
house them anymore, so I have to just
Imagine
move
if you
them.
just fell into it in the
Oh,
sludge.
don't. Oh no.
I'd just let it take us.
Yeah.
Whatever.
There's not enough showers in the world, is there, for
No,
that
it's
one?
not, no.
So yeah, so essentially they had to come up with an idea, and the idea was to excavate underground. And I mean, 6 million, that's a lot. So the catacombs remained largely forgotten until it became a novelty place for concerts and other private events in the early 19th century. So it was forgotten for a long time, and then in the 19th century, they started getting a bit of more interest and notoriety. After further renovations and the construction of accesses around the Place d'Enfer Rochereux, it was open to the public with visitations from 1874. Since 2013, the catacombs have numbered among the 14 City of Paris museums managed by the Paris Musée. Although the tombs compromises only a small section of the underground mines of Paris, Parisians currently often refer to the entire tunnel network as the catacombs. A large part of the tunnels are deemed dangerous and are actually illegal to enter. There's actually an entire chapter of the police force in Paris that are dedicated to preventing people from accessing this area. As a result, legend has developed that the catacombs is haunted and even is a portal to hell itself. I just find this so interesting that there's a whole chapter of police who are it must be very you know there must be something in there that the whole police chapter are trying to stop them from getting in.
I mean, there's a lot of like bodies and stuff like that, isn't there? Like,
Yeah, and maybe it's probably potentially dangerous, but I still think there's something I can understand why people are fascinated and think, oh, there's something more going on there. I was in Paris for a while when I was younger, but because the family I was staying with, they lived on the outskirts. I've actually never seen Paris at night, which is a big bucket list for me. And I've never been to the catacombs because they do these nightly tours, and I think they probably do it during the day as well. But a part of me would like to go, and then the other part of me, because I've seen the film, the 2014 film As Above, So Below. Remember this film?
oh yeah,
I This film gets a lot of kind of bad stick. It's not a really high rated film, but I absolutely love it.
it's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable.
I'm gonna go out there and you're probably gonna roll your eyes, but I think that to me that is the scariest horror film.
Oh,
No, it
no,
is
certainly not.
because it's based. The premise of the film is this girl and she's obsessed with like excavating underground tunnels and things. And basically, the further you go into the catacombs, the closer all these creepy things happen. And the idea to me that the further you go in somewhere, the more lost you get, like a labyrinth, and you can't get out. You can never get to the surface, and it's actually you're getting closer to hell. That terrifies me.
Yeah, but it's just the thought of it that terrifies you. Like the film itself wasn't
Oh
that
no, it is
scary.
because when she's in these tunnels and there's little creepy things coming out and stuff, and then things from the people's past come out. Like one of them must have been in a car crash, and you know what I mean. And it starts playing with your mind. It's like a mind bender thing.
You ever just think about that creepy kid in Insidious dancing around with the song?
Yeah, true. Um, but yeah, so another thing about that film is if you're a fan of Superstore, Jonah Ben Feldman, he's on it, which is really funny because he's when you watch him in Superstore, he's the least horror movie person ever, but that when I was watching Superstore, I was like, I recognize that guy, and
Yeah,
he's from that film. So there's there's actually a group of people in France who are called cataphiles that they're obsessed with the catacombs to the point where there's underground kind of networks where they go in and they set up raves and they set up secret cinema showings, and basically there was the police turned up, and there must have been they're always ahead of the game. So whether they've got like one of these fake illegal, sorry, police thing where they can listen to the police
Police scanners.
conversations, yeah, whatever it is, the radio, the cataphiles who set up this illegal underground, and they don't know who they are. They managed to completely remove every trace of them being there, apart from like they left one little thing. So they don't know who it is, but basically there's a group of people who are organising secret events underneath in the catacombs.
So how do people find out about these events?
Well, there's intel, but there must be like a secret, well, a secret network, secret society who they say, right, okay, you've got to be here at this time, and then if they get intel that the police are onto them, they quickly move out, so they don't know who they are. I think that's quite interesting.
It's very interesting,
I
yeah.
mean, God, it could be like famous people for all you know if they've got that kind of. Probably not, but so anyway, we're going to go into some haunted stories of the catacombs because, as you can imagine, that kind of place you're going to have.
It's
If
going
you're
to
going
have
to be
quite a few, isn't
ghosts,
there?
there's going to
Yeah.
be somewhere like that. This one terrifies me because I just feel so much for this poor guy. So it's a story of Philibert Aspelet. Hope I'm saying that right, probably not. He was a doorkeeper at the Val de Grace Hospital during the French Revolution. His job was to, be a stand on the door of the hospital and, let people in, stop any fights breaking out.
Bouncer.
Yeah, it's a posh word for a bouncer, isn't it? A doorkeeper. Your name's not in, you're not coming in. But the French Revolution, as you know, was a really turbulent time in French history. So he died in the catacombs of Paris in November 1793 after he entered them via a staircase located in the hospital courtyard. His motives are unknown, but some people think he was using the tunnels as a shortcut or he got lost trying to fetch a bottle of gin. His body was not discovered until 1804. 1804. 11 years later, in one of the quarry galleries, and was buried where it was found. The cause of his death was actually never determined. Asbury might have been identified by the hospital keyring hanging from his belt. His tomb is in the restricted part of the Paris catacombs under the Rue Henri Barbusse next to the Boulevard Saint Michel. Some people believe that he heard voices that lured him to go further and further into the tunnel and he was killed by a malevolent spirit of the many dead or actually a demon. Others think he was simply inebriated and became lost in the tunnel of darkness and couldn't find his way back to the surface. So either way, whether it's been by ghost or by your own doing,
Either
it's
way, it's not a good way to
terrifying.
go, like, is
Or
it?
like imagine, because you probably would have had a little candle or something, and then eventually the candle would have burnt out. That is terrifying, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah. I imagine going down and then the candle goes out and just being lost for, I'd imagine, a long time.
Yeah, and it creeps me out the thought of there's voices like of ghosts or a demon, or I mean, if you believe in it's a portal to hell, maybe the devil himself luring you further and further in until you can't find your way back out. So that was a more of an older one. This is more modern, take much of the more kind of modern day. So this one is a story that originated on the internet, and it's from this kind of story recount that I've took from it is from Reddit. So bear with us. It is a real story, but the account I've got from Reddit from a guy called Half Man, Half Armchair.
Believable.
I know.
Straight away, believable. I
Don't
like it.
you have to put it in. Ever since the release of 1999's Blair Witch Project, the concept of the found footage movie has been a staple of the horror genre since then. However, the following case is a real life example of found footage. One significant example of a cataphile is a man who shot some footage of the catacombs of Paris, sometime in the early 1990s. The footage, which was shot on a black and white video recorder, itself starts as a rather unremarkable video with the man exploring around the catacombs. He even picks up a few bones along the way. As the video goes on, however, the man begins to walk at a faster pace. He eventually begins to run, and in a state of panic, he finally drops the camera before running off into the darkness, and the camera just runs on until it runs out of battery. Sometimes after that, Sometime after that, the footage was found by a group of cataphiles. A documentarian by the name of Francis Friedland eventually acquired the video. He later presented the footage of the second episode of the ABC Family, which is now the freeform show Scariest Places on Earth, in 2000. This video was not without its skeptics, however. Some people believe that the footage was a hoax that was concocted by either the ABC family or Friedland himself. After all, the episode was aired about a year after the release of the Blair Witch Project, and just like the Blair Witch, it's highly suspected that the footage was shown on a television show instead of being handed over to the proper authorities. So essentially, this guy with he never came forward either because people put out on the internet and the media, look, if this was you and you're alive, come forward. There's no, they don't know who it was, but there's this guy in the catacombs in a place where he shouldn't be recording. He panics, he runs off into the complete darkness, probably like this Philip Burr guy, and never seen again. So what do you think?
A man got lost, panicked, dropped his camera, ran, trying to find his way out.
Yeah.
Started getting claustrophobic when he's down there because he realised that he had lost his way.
Yeah, but if that was you though, and you got out, you would just be like, "Oh yeah, that was me. I dropped a
He
camcorder
might not
years
have got out,
ago."
might have died down there.
Well, yeah, that's the idea, isn't it? That's what they're saying. But people are saying it's a hoax, that it was just drawn up to kind of get this notoriety for this guy who was making a show.
It's just a video of somebody getting lost, potentially dying. How's that going to drive up any sort of interest?
Well, of course it is, because after that there was a huge boom and people wanting to visit the catacombs because that old
Imagine
legend.
possibly get lost down there.
Well, I think it's quite creepy. Maybe it's just my own fears of being lost and trapped somewhere.
I don't think it's creepy in that you could possibly get lost down there.
Yeah, so anyway, however, there is an argument in favour of the footage being real. Nobody has stepped up after the initial airing of the episode nearly 2 decades ago, including Friedland himself. When I say I, this is half armchair man. I highly doubt that he is making any money from this since he kept a low profile, if his IMDb page is of any indication. He did appear on the 2014 episode of Ghost Adventures that revolved around the catacombs of Paris. However, Friedland had confirmed that the man in the video is still missing to this very day. Assuming that the found footage is real, the central question of this post is what happened to the man? Researching this particular post has been a challenge in and of itself. The footage itself does have a Wikipedia page, so I've had to rely on a few scarce sources, which I do take with a grain of salt. While a lot of the sources mentioned above have suggested paranormal connections to the video, I believe that there's a more likely explanation that is grounded in reality. The tunnels that make up the catacombs are between 150 to 200 miles long. It is relatively easy to get lost in the said catacombs. For example, two teenagers had to be rescued from the catacombs after being stranded for 3 days. Since the average temperature within the catacombs is a cool 60 degrees Fahrenheit, it's safe to assume that the man managed to get disorientated before succumbing to hypothermia, which could have happened to the guy from the 1700s as well.
Yeah,
So actually, we're making fun of his name. This armchair man's quite a sensible guy. He's just saying more likely it's either a hoax and the guy's living well. I hope it's a hoax, or he's lost and his body's still unfound. So we're quite creepy though, the catacombs. Would you like to visit if we went to Paris?
no.
Would you? Yeah, I know, because I always wanted to go, and the more I've read stories, I just think,
I'd look at them from the outside, but I
well, you
wouldn't go
can't
in.
really. It's underground.
Well, no, I'd look at the door to them. I mean,
The door, the
yeah, I'd look at the
entrance to
door,
hell.
maybe take a look down the stairs or whatever, yeah, however you
Yeah.
get down there.
Get one of them, like, the call
Uh,
scopes that go
just
down.
get a little drone, a little drone and fly the drone down there.
Or just send me down with a camera on my head.
Ah, yeah,
But yeah, but imagine though, like, that the voice is luring you. Because I could
luring
even,
you because you're the one that came
you're
down
like,
there.
Amy, you're so cool.
It's lying to you.
You know what I'm like? I'm like, you really? So we're going to move on now to much closer to home is my favourite city, Edinburgh. So Edinburgh, Edinburgh have also got catacombs as well, which are equally as creepy, maybe not as famous. So this is a story from Historic Mysteries by Doug McGowan. Paris is fairly well known for its catacombs, but it is no way the only metropolis that once featured life underground. Scotland's pristine Edinburgh once had an unseemly history of residents living under bridges and streets. This is the history of the Edinburgh Underground. Edinburgh's use of subterranean, did I say that right?
Yeah,
I'm going to keep that in. Subterranean living is directly the result of the construction of the Flodden Wall in 1513. The wall surrounded the city. This meant that new buildings had to be constructed either outside the wall, which was not safe from attack, or necessitated the conversion of cellars and below street storage rooms into housing within the actual city. So in the 1700s, Edinburgh began building a series of bridges. Because the bridges served as a crossing for roads and hills and not rivers, they were dry, open spaces beneath. These areas became prime real estate for cheap housing. Entire cities formed under bridges in a honeycomb of sealed off rooms that remained out of sight from the bridge, where the wealthy tended to stroll about. Originally, the rooms under the bridges were used to hold prisoners and the undesirables. You'd be an undesirable,
Thanks.
just so you know. But eventually, bridges such as the South Bridge became used for tradesmen as economical shops, albeit shops with no windows and narrow doors. During the 19th century, the population in the city swelled with survivors of the Irish famine who relocated to cities such as Edinburgh. Lacking money, they added to the crowds living below the city. A doctor of the time remarked that he found a family of four living in a vault or cave under a large tenement, and sublet, their miserable and dark abodes to as many as can be crammed into them. As the 20th century dawned, fire, structural collapses, and housing built outside the Flodden Wall brought an end to the occupation of the labyrinth below Edinburgh. As the city erected new buildings and roads, many traces of the subterranean houses became paved over and destroyed. However, it was not forgotten. Tales of the underground city became the stuff of legends, and many people consider these underground habitations and shops as haunted.
All I can think of is that is Futurama. No, where Fry goes to the old New York.
Yeah, it's very much like that, like a city underneath a city. You can imagine them all being cramped in. I mean, I've actually been there. There's tours, that these kind of ghost tours in Edinburgh.
Hmm.
It's really creepy because you go underneath and there's actually houses and shops, and it's quite spooky. Imagine living underground. But yeah, so it was a bit different to the Paris catacombs. It was more kind of actual underground housing rather than a
Well,
home
the
of the dead.
Paris ones are just like
It's
graves and
just
stuff like that, aren't
gravestones,
they?
isn't it?
Whereas that one sounds like it's like full on like little city.
Yeah, it was quite funny when we did the tour because you always get someone who's very theatrical leading it. These kind of like, and I always get picked on. I must have that face.
You do.
So,
Victim.
yeah, but no, like maybe funny. Try and tell myself
It's because I'm funny.
for a laugh. Um, Mary's King's Close at Edinburgh Underground. So additional traces of Edinburgh Underground have come to light. Arguably the most notorious being Mary King's Close, a street buried beneath the city chambers. Law states that in the mid 1640s, Close housed plague victims who were sealed up but still alive in an effort to prevent the spread of the illness. That's happened a lot of times. It makes me think of obviously we moaned about COVID, and you don't get me wrong, it was horrific, but in the past, in the great plagues and things, if you had the plague, or even if you didn't have it, but someone in your house had it, you were all just sealed up and left to die. You couldn't come out. That's horrendous,
Just
isn't
bricked
it?
up your door.
Yeah, no, literally, uh-huh. Um, there have been countless paranormal experiences in the vaults, so much so that TV shows such as Ghost Adventures and Most Haunted, R.I.P. Derek, I love Most Haunted, have filmed episodes here. One of the most frequent experiences in the cold is the cold gusts of air that surprise guests, even when the very on the very low levels of the vaults. There are no windows or open doors down here. Yeah, but if you're underground, I can imagine like if you're in a cave, random gusts of air. Would that not just be? Is there not a scientific explanation for that one?
Surely just be like wind or something coming down from somewhere, maybe like cracks in the wall or the ceiling or
Yeah,
I mean
that's
something, yeah.
like dampness. Another common experience is hearing voices, sometimes whispering in your ear, which is absolutely horrific. People often see and sense a disembodied presence. Perhaps the most menacing ghost of Edinburgh Vault is Mr. Boots. He sounds quite funny though, to be fair,
Ah, he
this
doesn't
one.
sound scary, Mr. Boots, though.
Oh no, it's Mr. Boots. He's been described as an unkempt man who wears high boots, hence the name. Mr. Boots likes to lurk at the back of the vault, throwing rocks at unsuspecting visitors, and has been known to push people over.
He's just a menace. That's all he is. He's a little
He's a
menace.
school bully.
Chucking rocks at people, just being a bother. He's not
Yeah,
scary.
it's quite funny actually. People have heard his high boots. Oh my God, why have I got in my head like something like a 1970s disco stew?
I'm just thinking of Puss in Boots.
I've got a hybrid between Puss in Boots and disco stew in my head. Um, People have heard his high boots walking on the cobbles and his voice echoing from a chamber in the distance. Another ghost who likes to interact with visitors is Jack. If you're in the white vault, he may grab your hand. He's just lonely.
Just wants a friend. Go on, Jack.
Oh, maybe you should go there. They're quite nice ghosts, these, aren't they?
Not too bad, are they? All I keep thinking to myself is just imagine when like waking up in the morning you're feeling a little bit under the weather. So you go to open the door and Mr. Boots is standing there with a brick in hand and cement and he's like halfway through building you shut in. You're not leaving.
I would have got you if it wasn't for these pesky kids. Oh God, I feel sorry for Jack and Mr. Booth. Maybe they should just get together and hold hands and throw rocks at each other. Yeah. And there's also Annie. So in the 90s, the renowned Japanese psychic Aiko Gibo, Probably saying that wrong, apologies, came to visit the real Mary King's Close while she was making a film about the haunted places of Britain. When it came to stepping inside a room of Alan's Close, she could barely enter the 17th century room for the pain and unhappiness she could feel there. I cannot enter this room, it is too strong. There is a child beside me. Her little hand is clutching my trouser leg. I just cannot go into this room. She was separated from her parents. She wants to go home and see her family. Her desire haunts this place very strongly. Eventually, Gable was able to cross the threshold. Inside the room, she communicated with the young girl spirit near the fireplace. Her name was Annie. She has lost her favourite doll and is heartbroken. Gable then purchased a doll from a local Royal Mile shop and returned it to the little girl. Gable stated that the doll apparently brought comfort to the child and said so long as the doll remains, it is said that the room will never again be disturbed by her spirit. Ever since Gibo left the first doll, a growing number of people from all over the world have brought Annie dolls, toys, and jewellery. It's turned into an extraordinary phenomenon, even with the first responders leaving their badges as a mark of respect. From the New York City Police Department to Newport Beach Police and numerous fire departments, we've had donations from all over the globe. That's quite a so it's turned into a bit of a cult following. I've never heard of this. I've never seen this, but there's just a big room full of dolls and toys and for this alleged ghost of a girl called Annie.
Yeah, I mean, if loads of people are doing it, and loads of people must believe it. It's a bit of a downer, that story from the Jack and Mr. Boots.
Yeah,
Really killed it
she
a
hasn't
little
got
bit.
enough pizzazz for you, has she not?
Stop being a little menace and chucking rocks at people.
Yeah, yeah, it was just a night. They're all nice ghosts. She just wants a family and she wants a
Um,
doll. I love how this ghost is like the ghost hunter. She's like, no, this girl really misses her family, and she's like, no, no, I just miss me doll.
it's just fun.
I just want stuff.
Uh,
Yeah, these are quite funny ghosts, aren't they?
uh,
Jack, Mr. Boots, and Annie could be a film. But yeah, I like that one. It's kind of built there's different stories like this. I really want to cover this the doll island that was covered on BuzzFeed. There's an island somewhere in the world where there's just lots of dolls. It's
oh
really
yeah, I
creepy. People
remember that
keep bringing
episode.
them.
Yeah.
But so to wrap that up, then what do we think about? We've went through the Bank Street. We've started with Indian burial grounds. The Bank Street Nun, Sarah Whitehead. We went with the Catacombs of Paris with the Lost Footage Man, which you weren't very impressed by, and oh, I think I finished strong with the Three Scots.
Yeah. Well, my favourite was definitely Mr. Boots and Jack. I think the Catacombs ones are probably the most believable. People
Yeah.
like sort of losing the way and running off into the distance. I mean, and if anywhere it's going to be a gateway to hell, I'd imagine where 6 million corpses are would probably be
Yeah.
a good place. Um, yeah.
And also, just randomly, I don't know why I'm saying this, but the Scottish accent is my favourite accent in the world. So, in Edinburgh is one of my favourite places in the world. So, I think I want to go there. I don't, I love Paris, but I'm too creeped out to go to the catacombs. But I would go and see Mr. Boots.
I'll go and see Mr. Boots, like,
Yeah,
may hit a rock off you.
well, we'll be the first. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. So, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Ghost Creatures and Scares Oh My.
Please make sure to leave us a review and let us know what you thought of today's episode. Feedback will really help us out, and we really want to know your thoughts to help us hone our podcast.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook if you haven't already, and you can email us at ghostcreaturesandscares@gmail.com. If you've got any supernatural tales you'd like to share, or you just want to let us know what you think we could do better or what you like. Thank you so much again. We're going to be back next week to talk about poltergeists.
Have a great week. Hello, and welcome back to Ghost Creatures and Scares